Hello everyone and welcome to the third episode of the Real Life Racing 2015 series, and for this first race I managed to qualify in 11th place, which wasn't all that special, but I will come on to the reason for that later on, and it's generally all to do with kart performance, which we'll be talking a lot about throughout the course of this video. So at the start of the first race it was very strange what happened. All I'm thinking about is trying to make up a few positions so I have a better finishing position and starting position for the next race, but then it seems like the person on pole position seems to break. I don't know what's going on there, but I end up losing out on it a lot more than everyone else. I'm kind of the last person in that train who loses out, and I end up losing so many positions at the start. As you can see there, I've already lost 5 positions just going into that first corner, and it does get a lot worse here. I think what happens is that the person who was on pole position had never been there before, and I'm not sure. I don't have any idea why he decided to brake during the middle of the main straight, but it caused this absolute massive cluster behind, and I really lost out on that. I was certainly one of the worst. I lost out the worst out of a lot of people there. So it's all hectic at this point. I make up a few positions from people going off on the left and making a few overtakes as well, and it's very rough at the start of this race, and I'm kind of in with all of the rough guys, the ones who aren't necessarily going to be as clean as you might think. I managed to get an overtake on the left there, another overtake on the left, and then another overtake on the right. So I make up 3 positions just in that corner, and I've gone from 11th place on the grid all the way down to 18th, and then back up to 12th. So that was one hell of a hectic first lap, and I remember thinking at the time, what is going on here, because it was absolutely crazy. And then I end up getting someone gets a run on me going down the start finish straight there, but I end up managing to keep the position on the inside. And as we come on to a few laps later, I've caught up to the group that's just in front of this. So I've stayed in 12th position, I've managed to put in some decent laps, and I've caught up to the next group. So they're all battling as well, that's why they're losing time, and I'm trying to sort of regain some positions that I probably really shouldn't have lost at the start, and it's been encouraging at this point that I've been able to catch up. It shows that I've got some decent pace. As you'll see, it turns out that the guy in blue there has a pretty poor kart. As you can see there, he's just getting completely overtaken on the straights. I managed to get around the outside here, which gives me the inside for the next bit, and just managed to get it hanging out around the outside there. Now that guy in blue is actually Smithy112 from the Multi-Class Endurance Championship. If any of you watch that, he's in the GT3 class. Smithy112, that's him, and we'll be seeing him a fair amount throughout the course of this video and probably the course of this series as well. So yeah, it's been a pretty hectic start to this race, and it wasn't one that I really wanted to have. Generally, when you're caught up in the back end of things like this, you are caught up with people who may not necessarily be as clean as you might hope, especially compared to racing at the front. As you can see here, people making mistakes a lot more often, knocking people off. Yeah, he put his hand up, but what good does that do? It's not really going to give him any help in that and give him any place back or anything like that. So it's rough, and as you can see there's a perfect example of it. Someone just coming straight on the inside. I think people see the bumpers around the outside of the kart and suddenly assume that they need to use them at every available opportunity, whereas that's not really how it works. You're not meant to have contact at any point, and it was rough, and I was getting more and more annoyed as I was going through this race at just what I was witnessing, especially at the start, losing all those positions, and then that crazy first lap where it was just completely ridiculous, and then the events of what you'll see throughout the rest of this race. Now that was the guy who came down on the inside of me there, so at this point I'm not going to be easy with him at all. He runs me off the road there. I'm getting hit in the back as well. You keep him in mind because he does feature a fair few times in this video as well and in the final. But I always give somebody a chance. I'll always give somebody a chance to race properly. For example, the guy just in front of me here with his own helmet and own suit, he's a good racer. He knows what he's doing. So does Smithy112, who from the Multi-Class Endurance Championship. We are all fair with each other. But then you get some people who aren't necessarily as fair as they could be. I'll always give everybody a chance, but as soon as somebody starts getting a bit rough, I don't mind getting a bit rough back. So that's what I've thought. The last couple of laps I've had all of this roughness. I'm not really going to start take it anymore. But the problem is, as you can see there, I'm just being completely left on the straights. My kart isn't that great, and then you've got someone else on the left there who has an even quicker kart, and that is pretty much the story of this whole video. This whole video is all about inequality, and inequality in particular in kart performance. Now, I managed to get a good run out of here, which gives me a run down the inside on someone who I know is going to be fair. So that's probably pretty much the only nice clean overtake that I get done throughout the whole of this race, which is a shame. But when you're racing against someone who knows what they're doing, you can do things like that and not have any issues. But I've mentioned it before in the previous videos in this series, well, maybe in the 2014 series more so than this one. There is a difference in performance between the karts. This is a higher kart championship. All the karts get swapped around after every race, so you're not going to be in the same kart that you were in the previous race, and it's generally just luck of the draw whether you get a quick one or a slow one. Now, in the past, the difference hasn't really been that much. It's been half a second to a second per lap from best to worst. It seemed like this round, this season, in fact, after the winter that they'd been through and all that kind of stuff, it seemed like the difference in performance between the karts is a lot bigger, and certainly we were noticing sort of 2 or 3 second per lap differences between having a quick kart, having one of the quickest karts, and having one of the slowest karts, and that is a huge difference. When you think, if it's 2 or 3 seconds a lap, you're going to end up between 20 and 30 seconds behind at the end of a 9-lap race. It's an absolutely huge difference. And the problem that it generates is that you have people who aren't necessarily as quick in the corners, but they have a kart that is just flying on the straights. So that's what you're going to see throughout the course of this video as well, Then you get people like that who come into the side of you in a bit of a rough fashion, but that one I suppose wasn't too bad. But yeah, it breeds things like that, because you get people having a quicker kart, they get a run on you and make a move that just isn't going to work. And as you can see there, I just get completely left in the straight. Now this guy in front, I don't know what he's doing. He's all over the shop. He's not really in control of the kart. The thing is, there's nothing wrong with people not necessarily being as quick as anybody else. People have to learn. People have to be able to improve their skills, and this is I've been in that position as well. When I first started doing this championship, I wasn't anywhere near the front, and I have to improve my skills. But to do that, I had to race in the mid pack, with slower guys. The problem that it brings when you have people in quicker karts is that they're racing with quicker guys and making moves that just aren't going to work. So at this point I was really mad, and at this point I get a really good run out of this corner because I'm better in the corners. I'm able to get 2 people there, and at this point I just think, right, I'm going for this, because this was the guy who knocked me off in the first couple of laps, and I managed to get a triple overtake done around that last corner for the last lap of the first race. It was a pretty good feeling, to be honest, because all those guys were being pretty rough and not really knowing what they're doing, and just happening to have quick karts which were helping them on the straights. So yeah, that was a pretty good feeling to get that triple overtake done right at the end. I did manage to sort of make 2 positions off my starting position, but ultimately it was a pretty disappointing race because I was getting left on the straight. I didn't really have that great of a kart, and I could have done so much more if I had. So coming into the second race, I was hoping for something a bit better, but it turns out that my kart here isn't great either. And this just happens sometimes, Sometimes you'll get a bad kart, and then you'll get another bad kart, and then you'll get another bad kart. Hopefully, you would hope that over the course of a championship, you will end up evening out a little bit, and luck evens out, so you get some good karts, some bad karts, but it evens out for everybody. But sometimes you just don't get the luck on any given race. So I got hung out to dry a little bit there on the inside, and I'm down into 8th position. But I had made up a few positions from the start before that, so overall it wasn't too bad at this point. I was thinking, alright, just consolidate your position, and try to see what you can do, because there's no guarantee that the people in front have good karts either. Everybody gets a different kart, so there are some people in the front who might have slower karts than me, and that's certainly a possibility. So you've always got to be pushing on, you've always got to be trying to make up a few positions. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, and it is actually very, very difficult to know how well you're doing in terms of kart performance until you come to the straight like this, and then you see that you just get completely left for dead, as you can see there, by everybody, get caught up by people behind, and that's when it starts to settle into your mind that, yeah, I'm going to be having issues here. Thankfully, I managed to get a really good move done there up the inside, carrying the momentum through, but he does manage to hang it out around the outside here and get that position back. But that's what I was saying. It was my cornering ability in those first couple of corners that allowed me to get that move done. But ultimately, you're always fighting a bit of a losing battle, really, because even if you're quicker than somebody in the corners, which you'll see throughout the course of this video that I'm able to do that. I'm able to catch people in the corners, get right on their ass, as you can see here. You just end up getting left on the straight like that. It doesn't look like much of a difference, but it really, really is. And it means that you can't get those moves done. You just can't get yourself in a position to make an overtake unless somebody is in a similar kart to you. So you see it here again. People just leave me for dead. As you can see there, it's just absolutely crazy. And you can see Smithy 112 there hits me in the back, giving me a bit of a boost. So he finished quite low down because he had a pretty bad kart in that first race, but he's managed to get a decent kart in this one. It's actually a very quick kart, and you saw the difference in performance there as well, because he just flew right into my back, giving me a bit of a boost. He did that there as well, so I could get up on the inside there. I'm not really giving a damn anymore. I'm just going for these moves because people are being as rough as you like. I get a bit bogged there, so I just say, just you go. I'm not going to hold him up anymore. He's already given me a bit of help by pushing me in the back a little bit. But when you see a difference in performance like that, you're going to have a rough time. When you've got somebody in a kart like that's pushing you so much quicker, and you realise the difference in performance there, you know that it's going to be difficult. And what you'll notice as I'm going down the straight is that I'm actually looking back a lot more than I normally do. And that's because of the mindset that I was in at the time. I knew that I had a slow kart. I knew that I was going to be vulnerable. So I'm looking back all the time, trying to sort of defend my position. I shouldn't have been doing that. I should have just stuck to the inside, and this is what happens. I end up not realising there's someone on the left there, and get caught out, and end up getting hit and losing a ton of positions. So I was up into 6th or 5th place at that point, and I just lose position after position after position, as you can see here. It's an absolute nightmare. And that was all brought on because I was basically paranoid about losing a position on the straight, because I knew that I was going to be vulnerable, because I'd seen these karts that I'd just overtaken. The only reason I'd overtaken them is because I was getting help, getting a push from behind from Smithy there. So I knew that I was going to be vulnerable on the straight. What I should have done is just kept to the inside and not been looking back all the time. But it was a mindset thing, it was a mental thing that meant I kept looking back, and it wasn't the right thing to do. Because then I pulled over to the left to take the normal line and didn't realise that someone was there. Now the problem with that also is that normally someone wouldn't be there. If all the karts were equal, by the time you got to the end of the straight, nobody would have that much of a performance difference to be able to be up the inside of you like that. So on the one hand, it was my fault that I shouldn't have been looking back like that all the time, and on the other hand, you just don't expect people to be in that position because of the experience that you've got with the karts. You shouldn't be having to defend so hard in a straight because you're just getting completely overtaken. So I managed to get a position there by, as you saw, the gap between me and that guy was huge going on along the start-finish straight, and I made it up in 1 or 2 corners, and it's the same here. I'm making up all the time in the corners, but I just can't do anything about it. I just can't because as you can see there, he's just driving away from me along the straight. The difference in performance was just absolutely incredible. And as I was going round, trying to race as hard as I can, I was just getting more and more frustrated with it. I just couldn't believe it. The reason for that is that, you know, you spend all this time, year after year, racing and improving what you're doing and trying to get better and better at attacking, defending, improving your lap times, and then it makes no difference in the end because it's all about whatever kart you get, and it's a real shame that that's the case. So yeah, again, you know, I managed to come around here and basically I just get completely mugged on the inside here. You know, much quicker kart just gets the run, and I've got nothing to do with that, and then another person gets a better run there, and I end up getting mugged again around the outside. I get hit in the back there as well, and I just lose even more positions, and I end up in 14th place, and that's actually where it ends. I do end up finishing this race in 14th position, and it was just an absolute nightmare. I think that's probably one of the worst races I've ever had. It was just horrendous. Smithy112, who did come up with me against me on that with that quick kart, was helping me in the back, as you saw earlier. He ended up finishing second, so you know, that's the difference. He'd had a really bad kart in the first one, finished way down, managed to go back up and finish in second, and then I went backwards. It's such a nightmare when you're in this situation, and it's just so frustrating, because for all intents and purposes you shouldn't be racing against these people. You should be racing. I feel I've got the pace to be racing at the top, and I've proved that with some of the videos, you know, some of the results that I've had last season. And then you end up with people who might not necessarily know what they're doing in you know, fully going around corners, things like that. They're not quite getting the pace around the corners. You know, they're making moves that aren't going to come off. You know, silly moves, being very rough, all that kind of stuff. Not really having an idea about what they should be doing, but because they've got a quick kart, they're up there fighting with the sort of top 10, and that's just not how it should be. So it was very frustrating, and it was a huge annoyance. This whole round I was just annoyed all the time. From that very, very first corner of the very first race, I just had no motivation whatsoever. Just getting, you know, bumped around everywhere, having a terrible kart, you know, just getting left in a straight line, doing my best to defend and all that kind of stuff, but also making poor decisions because I'm always having to be looking behind me about, you know, who's going to be coming up quickly. And yeah, it was just so frustrating and so demotivating as well, to the point where at the end of this entire video, at the end of this round, I was questioning whether I should even continue with this, you know, whether I should continue doing this championship, and should I look somewhere else or just stop entirely, because it's that frustrating. Even if you get a good kart and you make up a load of positions, it's not really you that's done it, it's the kart that's done it. So what's the point? You know, what's the point in doing it at all? If your performance is going to be based on your luck of which kart you get, what's the point in bothering in the first place? You know, why did I bother spending 2 years trying to improve my performances? Why did I bother trying to improve my lap times, trying to improve my racecraft? What's the point? What was the point? And those were the thoughts that were kind of going through my mind at the end of this round. It was such a difficult one mentally to really get over. In this third race, as you can see there, you know, I started in 14th, dropped down to 16th, managed to get up into 14th again, as you've seen there, and that's pretty much where I finished this third race. I have a really good battle actually with somebody just behind me. We're both clean races, and I'm pretty much defending all the way through. The car performance is pretty much the same between the both of us, and we have a good battle between us, and it's really just the two of us battling throughout the whole race. And that was actually quite refreshing, you know, even though it was over 14th place, we both enjoyed that because it was clean racing. We were both being clean with each other, you know, not making silly moves that we'd both been experiencing throughout the whole event. So it was nice to be able to have that, but ultimately it was for 14th place. You know, we were both out of position, if you like. It was a very close end, as you'll see right at the line, but you know, that's just the positions that we were. And I actually ended up in the same kart that I had in round 2, and this is just the 14th is just the position that this kart could achieve. Normally what happens is that the karts that finish, say for example the kart that finishes in last place ends up being the first place kart in the next race, and carry on. So the kart that finished in first would go to the person who finished in last in the previous race. Because I finished in 14th out of 27, I was right smack bang in the middle, so I got exactly the same kart again in race 3, which was a huge shame. So that's just where it was there. So going into the final, I was pretty downbeat about it all. The kart that I had didn't seem to feel too bad, but I was starting in 14th place. That's just because in the final, your starting position is determined by the points you accrue throughout the first 3 races, and it's in the final where all the trophies are handed out. So I was starting in 14th place, and as I said, the kart that I had didn't feel too bad, but I've got a lot of work to do at this point. It is 11 laps the final, it's 2 laps extra. I go straight over to the inside here to sort of defend the position, and it looks like it's going to be another same old story as someone completely destroys me in the straight again. He must have had a really, really quick kart, as you can see. He does, but he's just not got the ability around the corners, and he ends up dropping a few positions as somebody else goes off on the left as a wants to be a lawnmower or something. But yeah, I managed to make a position there. I get hit a little bit in the back by those 2 guys that you saw going into that corner, but I managed to keep the position, and then I make another position going up here into this corner. So I'm making positions all the time, as you're seeing here. I'm able to because this is really the first kart that I've had all the way through this whole round that has been anywhere near decent. It's not bad, it's not the best in the world, but it's quick. It's not too bad at all. So it's something that I can do something with. And as you've seen there, the huge difference that you saw from the previous races, I've been able to make up positions straight away. So I've gone from 14th, well, I went down to 15th, but now I'm back up to 11th. Now this final is going to be our feature race. So what I tend to do in these videos is show you sort of highlights of some of the more boring races, or cut out a few sections that nothing really happened. But I tend to try and put one feature race in there which shows the entire race. Now this is going to be the feature race, the final here. That's why this video is a little bit longer than they normally are, by about 5 minutes or so, because when the final is the feature race, obviously you've got 11 laps as opposed to 9 laps that we normally have. So I've caught up to this group in front of me, and as per usual, it's very rough, as we've pretty much been having, but I managed to get a triple overtake done once again, up on the inside of all of those guys there, go from 11th to 8th in one corner. So I was pretty happy about that. I was able to do things that I couldn't do before with a decent kart, and then I just get hit completely in the back, and I just, you can see my frustration there. It's just so annoying. This guy's been annoying me all the way through the whole round, really. He's showing in the corners that he's not quite there yet in terms of getting the lap time, but he consistently gets karts that just fly away from me in the straight. So it's so frustrating that when he makes sort of a move like that going into that hairpin, just completely hits me in the back and takes that position, doesn't say sorry, doesn't give it back again, anything like that. It's really frustrating. So I'm not holding back at this point. He's annoyed me enough now, but I do want to try and keep it clean. I don't want to go down to that level of hitting someone off, so I do keep it clean. I just be a bit more rough than I normally would be, and I make up 2 positions going into this lap. So I've started in 14th and I'm already up into 7th already. We're only coming on to the sort of end of the 3rd lap at this point. I managed to do that chicane a little bit better than the guys behind me, because that's pretty much what we've been seeing all the way through. When you're able to get do a better job in the corners, if you're in front of someone, then you're going to be okay. It's when you're behind someone that you have issues. But I've managed to make up 7 positions already going into the 4th lap, and I'm starting to catch up to the group in front of me as well. And this is where I start to get a bit of sort of belief that I might be able to get a decent position. Now for the final, the top 3 positions get trophies, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, because we have a lightweight championship and a heavyweight championship. So if I was to finish, say, 6th in the final, but there were 3 heavyweights in the top 5 positions, then I would still get a trophy for 3rd place in the lightweight championship. So the difference in kart performance does mean that's a possibility. Normally you would expect the lightweight guys to be quicker than the heavyweight guys, but the difference in kart performance means that there is a bit of a more of a mix up there, but I will come on to that a bit later on. But yeah, ultimately, you want to be in the top 3 positions in the final to get a trophy, and it's in the final that I've never won. I've won races before, I've won heats before, but I've never won a final. So I've finished 2nd plenty of times, as you've probably seen from my 30,000 subscriber room setup video tour thing. I've finished 2nd plenty of times, but I've never finished 1st in the final. And as you can see, there's a difference in performance with the slipstream as well. I was able to get a much better run there and get around the outside here. And I suppose you do have to take that into account, because the guy who I've just passed there was in the heavyweight championship, so weight does play a factor. It's not all about kart performance, but a lot of the time it is. So I've managed to get up into 5th place, and I can see the group in front of me of 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. So we're only halfway through the race. We're not even halfway through the race yet, and I'm within touching distance of the top 4, and I want to be in the top 3 to get a trophy. Ultimately, really, I want to be in 1st place to get that 1st place trophy that I've never ever had before. So I'm pushing really hard now. I've got some belief in the kart. I know that this kart is quick. I'm really pushing hard, and I end up actually, I'm not sure it's this lap, I think it's the next lap, I end up setting the best lap time of the entire day. Actually, yeah, it's I set a 1 minute 6.6, as you can see there in the top right hand side. The 5th lap there, that was a 1 minute 6.6. That was actually the 2nd best lap of the entire day. The best one I set on lap 7, I believe. But this kart is quick. I'm able to get a really good lap time out of this kart. I'm able to really push it. Smithy 112 again is in front of me. He's not got the best kart in the world either. I've certainly got a quicker kart than he does at this point. He is defending, but eventually he decides that there's pretty much no point. We're both slowing each other up at this point. And when basically at this point I'm thinking, right, I'll just wait until the straight. I don't need to be making any stupid moves. I've obviously got a quicker kart than he does, as you can see here. I don't need to be doing any stupid moves. I'll just wait until we get to the straight. I may lose a second or two stuck behind him, but it's the best way to do it, and I'll be able to just overtake him along the straight. He realizes that's the same, the same thing. There's very little point in him sort of defending too much. He realizes what the idea is, and I basically go straight past him here, as you can see. The difference in performance there isn't as much as other karts that we've seen throughout the course of the race and this video, but it's enough. It's definitely enough to make a difference in performance and a difference in lap time, to the point where it becomes very, very hard to keep someone behind you when they've got such a performance difference. So as you can see in the top right, I lost about 1.5 seconds there, stuck behind him, but ultimately, I didn't lose too much time, and the top 3 are right there just in front. So I'm pushing hard. I'm in 4th place. Top 3 get a trophy. In actual fact, I've already got a trophy because 2 of the guys in front are heavyweights. So I've already got a trophy, but I want to win. I want to win this race. I want to win the final. I want to get that 1st place trophy that I've never got before. And it really pisses me off that I haven't got one of those trophies yet, because I've been so close on so many occasions. And if you want to watch the 2014 series, you're welcome to go back and watch that and see how close I've been. So there's the 106.5 that I set on that lap. It was the best lap time of the day, so I was really, really pushing at this point. As you can see, I'm just going as quick as I possibly can. And the idea is that these guys up front are battling with each other. They're trying to get past each other. They're trying to defend each other. They're all battling with each other. Because I've got clear air in front of me, I'm able to catch them up reasonably quick. So that's allowing me to have even more belief that I can do something good at this point. But I am also aware that we're getting close to the end of the race. As you can see, we're already coming round to the end of lap 8 out of 11. There's only going to be 3 more laps to go at the end of this. That's why I'm pushing so hard. I need to make sure that when I get to them, I've got enough time to get something done. If I'm just going to get up to them by the end of the last lap, then I don't give myself enough time to make any moves and make a position. So they are still battling. I am catching them. I am catching up to them at a very, 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 very quick rate. That probably would have been an even quicker lap if I hadn't made that mistake on the hairpin there. But yeah, I'm still catching at a very, very quick rate. This is where it gets a bit tense. This is where you are really, really focused on what you're trying to do in the moment. And even this has already been a fantastic race for me. I've come up from 14th on the grid up to 4th already, catching up to the leaders. But even so, at the end of this race, I was still disappointed and still demotivated about the whole thing, because ultimately it was more determined on my kart performance that I was able to catch up to these guys. They have a bit of argy-bargy in the front there, and I'm right up on them now. This is the battle for the lead of the race, a 4-way battle for the lead, as you can see here. Now, something that I've got to explain. The guy who's in first place at the moment, he's the same guy who did that rough move on the inside of me on this corner in the first race. So as you saw there, I also managed to get up into 3rd place. So this is tense. This is right for the battle for the lead. Now, he's in a kart that can go about 1 second per lap quicker than what he's getting out of it. He's very, very quick in a straight line. Where do you think that time is going to be lost? It's going to be lost in the corners, and that's the problem that we're both having here trying to get past him. He's not as quick in the corners, which means that we're not able to make a move going into another corner because we can't get the move done anywhere else. Now, he shouldn't be up in this position. He's out of his depth a little bit, being in first place in the final here. And this is where it kind of tells, as you're going to be seeing here. It gets a bit too much for him, and he spins, and I end up going on the outside, losing all that time, and I just can't believe it. I just could not believe it. Absolutely unbelievable. And that's completely born out of the fact that he was in such a quick kart that he shouldn't have been in that first place if he'd been in any other kart. He was just in such a quick kart, he had such a pace advantage on the straights, and he couldn't handle the pressure or the kart itself, or just being offline in that position. Anybody else who we normally race with, who's a competent racer, would never ever have made that mistake, and he makes it, and that's not a problem with him. He's definitely able. He should be able to improve as he goes, but it's a problem with the idea that we have different speeds of karts, because he was ultimately fighting for the lead. I should never have gone on the outside. That was my fault, that was my mistake. I should never have gone on the outside. I should have just kept to the inside. I do tend to do that when someone spins out. It's something that I really do need to fix, because if I'd stayed on the inside, I probably would have still been able to battle for the lead. But ultimately, I was disappointed to finish in 3rd. It was a great race. I did manage to, come up from 14th all the way to 3rd. I was battling for the lead. But when you come, I've come so close to winning these finals before. And to have it sort of thwarted at the last moment like that, in a way that it never really should have been, it's so frustrating. And it was kind of the whole, it summed up the whole round really, that it was just one of those rounds where I was so demotivated at the end of it. Now, unbelievably, as we look at the championship table, even after all of that, I happened to be in the lead of the championship at this point, which was absolutely crazy. That surprised me. I've never been in the lead of the championship before, so there's another first. Still, the only thing that I haven't done is pretty much won a final and got a first place trophy, but I did manage to get a second place trophy for finishing second out of the lightweights class. The person who finished just ahead of me was in the heavyweights. So yeah, it was a mixed bag this time. I was very, very demotivated at the end of it, just because of the difference in kart performance. It made me feel, what's the point in even trying to improve? So yeah, it was. I hope you've enjoyed this video. You know, I hope it's shown you sort of the ups and downs of what you can get in something like this, and I hope I've been able to explain my thoughts about it a little bit, you know, reasonably well. And there was some good action in there for you guys to watch anyway. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. Let me know all your thoughts down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.